In this video, I will be showing you how to use the Canvas Learning Management System as a standards-based gradebook. And at my school site, I am required to give letter grades. So I'll show you how I will be converting that over, how I set up Canvas, how I set up the grade scale, all of those different things. Down in the description of the YouTube video, you will find a timeline that will have links so that you can jump ahead to different parts of the video that you might be looking for. First, I'm going to show you an overview. And it's just a really quick general overview, and I'll go into all the details and specifics later in the video. But in Canvas, if you've used the gradebook before, you would notice it looks something like this. Generally, you would have points here for the assignments that have been turned in, and this is the general gradebook. Now, there is also something called the Learning Mastery Gradebook. And the Learning Mastery Gradebook is something that if you don't find it here, you'll need to turn it on within your Canvas settings or potentially have your district turn it on for you to access. The Learning Mastery Gradebook is where instead of assigning just points for students, this is where you will create outcomes, which are basically your standards rubrics that you attach to assignments that you create, and then you can score those outcomes or assess those outcomes to see students' mastery of your different standards or outcomes. And here you can see I have for just this one student, I have 3 standards that have been assessed so far. This one here, that's green, meets mastery. So the student has mastered the content. Here they are near mastery and near mastery for this other standard as well. So these 2 gradebooks are separate. I can't have it automatically create a grade for me. So again, this video will show you the process that I go to and how to get a grade that I can put into the gradebook during the grading reporting period so that I can assign a letter grade at the end of the semester or quarter. One of the biggest key things that you need to do if you're using the Learning Mastery Gradebook, but you need to assign a grade to have letter grades for your students, is you need to set up your assignments categories maybe a little differently than you're used to. So the first thing is that I have an assignment category, which is worth 0% of the grade. This assignment category is where I create assignments for the students to complete. Students will submit their assignments through this. However, you'll notice that it's, again, 0% of the grade. I do not assign points to any of these. I don't give students any points for completing these assignments. These assignments have outcomes connected to them. And whether the student has mastered or is nearing mastery, when I assess their work, that will go into the Learning Mastery Gradebook. But this is just kind of a placeholder where I create assignments and I can access them to assess them there with the rubrics. But again, it's 0% of the total because I don't want students to have any sort of numerical grade. However, at the end of the grading period, my district requires me to assign actual grades. I can't say that the student has mastered so many standards. I need to have a letter grade. So I have a second category, assignment category here. This one is my letter grade, and it's transferred from the Learning Mastery Gradebook. And what I've done is I've made this worth 100% of the grade. So up until the quarter 1 progress reporting period, or whenever I decide to attach a letter grade or convert their mastery to a letter, students will have a 0 in the class if they look in the traditional gradebook. Then at the progress report period, I have this assignment that will be public. And what I will do is I will take their average of their learning mastery outcomes, their scores or their assessments on that, because it's on a 4-point scale. So I will be able to get a number, and I will be able to type in a number into the gradebook. You'll notice that I made these assignments out of 4 points total, and that's because I'm using a 4-point grading scale. And so students will get points based on their average of their mastery of standards, and it will calculate into the grade. And so I will show you how to set this up. I will show you how to change your grade scales, how to create outcomes in the rest of this video. But the key thing here that many people forget to do is you need to have 2 categories in your assignments. One for the assignments, worth 0% total. All of these assignments are actually worth 0 points as well, but I attach my outcomes to them. Those outcomes get assessed and go into the Learning Mastery Gradebook. Then, when I need to convert it to a letter grade, I can export those numbers and enter them into the gradebook that will be in this category. So it will be the regular gradebook, but it's 4 points each and worth 100% of the total grade. So this part is key. You cannot forget this step. And I'll walk you through creating assignments and the points, all of that later. One of the first things that you'll need to do is change or check the settings of your Canvas course. So on the left-hand side of your screen, in this menu at the bottom, choose Settings, and then go to Feature Previews. Now, my district has the Learning Mastery Gradebook turned on for everyone. Originally, they had it turned on, but it was a feature that you then had to check and make green. I do not have that showing here because it's on by default for my whole district. If you go to the if you go to the regular gradebook and you can't switch it to Learning Mastery, the first thing to check is that if you have that option here, you might need to turn it on. If you don't see an option here to turn on, you'll need to contact your district to ask them to turn on the Learning Mastery Gradebook. So that's the first thing to check. The second thing that you will want to do is go over to Course Details. In your settings for Course Details, you are going to want to change your course grading scheme. Now, you don't want to use your traditional grading scheme where A's are 90 to 100%, B's are 80 to 90, etc. Because if a 3 out of 4 is mastered, 3 out of 4 is 75%, that would mean on the traditional grading scale, a student who has mastered the standards is getting a C. So you're going to want to switch up your grading scheme. And here's an example that I have here that I'm using where each letter is worth a 20% part of that band. And so you want to add your new grading scheme here and make sure that it is selected. Right, one of the most important things that you need to do is actually set up your outcomes. Now, the outcomes are basically your standards that you will be assessing your students on. And I like to, in my navigation, so settings of the navigation, I like to have the outcomes in the top list so it's viewable for students so that students can also look at the outcomes at any time. Here is a student view. And so the student can click on outcomes in their left menu and look at the different standards and look at the rubrics for each of them at any time. Now, to set up the outcomes, you can do it in 2 different ways. You can add the outcomes individually, one at a time, or you can import them from a spreadsheet. And I personally like to import them from a spreadsheet. And so here it says, please follow the CSV format. This is by default part of Canvas. When you go in, you'll see these instructions. And I also, here is a template that kind of will walk you through the different parts, and I will have this linked. But you have to have all these different codes that need to match up. You can have groups, things like that. But I find it easier for me to be able to type things in onto a spreadsheet than to type them in automatically. So I have here, this is the one that I imported that has my outcomes. And I have 20 of them that I'm going to use throughout the school year. And I have the description, which is the main description for the standard, how I'm calculating it with a decaying average at 65%. And then what is mastery? So I set mastery at 3, but I have a 4-point scale. So 3 out of 4 is mastery, 4 out of 4 is exemplary, etc. And I do have a 0 where there's no evidence. But I like to be able to type them in onto a spreadsheet. It just makes it easier for me. One of the other reasons I like using this spreadsheet is I mentioned that I'm not going to give my students all 20 standards right away. And so what I could do is I could have this spreadsheet created, and maybe I'm only doing the first standards 1.1 through 2.3 at the beginning of the year. I can delete these rows, and then what I can do is go File, Download as a comma separated value, a CSV file, and save this file. When I save this file, I can import it into Canvas. I would click Import and then attach that particular file. But what's nice is that if I now want to add the next ones, I'm going to just do Undo. When I'm ready for the next ones, I can delete, these guys here, but I could upload this whole list. And what's great about it is if I had a typo in one of my things, I can change it here and it will fix my typo from before. So I like using this because it allows me to do some easy editing and then add standards as I go. So when I re-upload, it's going to basically just edit these guys. I'm not going to have double of them. And then it will add these ones that I added later. Okay, so I'm going to go back over to Canvas. So I'm in Outcomes. These ones I uploaded. So if I click on this, you can see it has the description. It has exemplary, mastery, approaching, minimal, no evidence, and then total points, it's out of 4. The mastery points are 3. The calculation method is the decaying average, and then it gives a description of what decaying average is. Students can see that as well when they're looking at it. And this was all pulled from the spreadsheet. However, I can just click plus outcome. I don't have to import it if I don't want to use a spreadsheet. I would name the outcome. You could add a friendly name. The friendly name is like a shortened version. I don't use a friendly name. I want students to see the whole name because if I just put 2.2, they're going to be confused and not know what 2.2 is. So I want them to know that it's part of models and addressing the phenomena. Here I can have a description. I would just type that in. And then here is where I have my criteria. So I am going to make this, instead of out of 5 points, I need it out of 4. 3, so I need a 2. I need to add that in. I need to add in a 1. And then what I'm going to do is click on it to edit, and I can type in whatever information I need. And I'm actually it actually has some information because I think I had started creating one earlier. So it has some other information here. I can delete them and start typing things over. But you would need to type in what your standards are, what the criteria is. And I like to have more than just meets or doesn't meet expectation. I like to have the specific criteria of what that actually looks like, but that's up to you how you choose to do that. Then you can choose, since I'm doing a 4-point scale, mastery is at 3. If you're doing a different scale, let's say you're doing a 3-point scale, this could be 3 and this could be 2, whatever it is that works for your standards-based grading system. Now, the calculation method. So this part here is really important. This is something that I've thought a lot about and have decided to go with decaying average. There is a link that I will put in the video that brings you here. How do I create an outcome for a course that walks you through all of this? But it also has the descriptions of the calculation methods. So decaying average and number of times, most recent score, highest score. I've chosen to do decaying average. And let's see, because I want students to not just master it once and then say, okay, well, I never need to do any of these assignments that have this outcome again because I've already mastered it. I want them to know that each attempt does play a role. However, the most recent attempt plays the biggest role in their mastery of the standard. So you can choose which one you'd like. And then you could also choose what the last item is worth. So here it's 65%. You can choose if you wanted the last item to be worth 70% of their grade or 40% of their grade. You get to decide what you want that last one to be. And then press save. I'm going to say cancel because I don't want to actually add a new one. But now we have the outcomes here. You can add groups. And when you add a group, this allows you to categorize things. Like I can have one group that's called questions, one group that's called models, one called investigation. I found that on the student end, it is too much clicking for students. When students go to look at their grades and they're looking at the Learning Mastery Gradebook, so I'm going to switch over, to Learning Mastery. There is this first folder, the name of your course. And students have to click. And I have it where all of the standards show up. But what would happen is if you had those folders, they would have to click on every folder, one for questions, one for models, one for investigations. And it gets really clicky for students and it makes it harder for them to find what they're looking for. So I decided not to use these groups or folders to put them in, but that is an option that you can use. The one big keynote here is if you use any standards on an assignment, you attach them to an assignment, and you have created that assignment, you only have the option to edit, not to delete a standard or an outcome, When I say standard, outcome and standard are equivalent. If you notice here for my 1.1, I can only move or edit this, and it's because it's been used to assess a student. I've assigned it to an assignment, so I cannot delete this one. I can only edit it. I have not used 3.1. So when you look at 3.1, I have the option to move or edit, but I also have the option to delete. So just know that as you are adding outcomes, don't attach them to any assignments until you're ready to attach them, because you won't be able to delete any outcomes if you have assigned them. The next thing that you'll need to do is set up your assignment groups. So you're going to go to assignments and you're going to click on plus group and you're going to create a group name. The first one that I used was assignments and I made it 0% of the grade. And so you can see that here. It's 0% total called assignments. If I click on the three dots, I can go into edit. You can see assignments. It's 0% of the grade. And then I have a second group. The second group is the one I called letter grade, transferred from Learning Mastery. And I made this one 100% of total, so 2 groups. When you create assignments for your students, you're going to do that like you normally would. In the assignment, you're going to go to assignments over here on the left, click plus assignment. And the first thing that you will want to do is make sure that it's going to the assignment category. And when you are creating your assignments, you are going to make them 0 points. Okay, so first I'm going to type in the name of it. I'm going to have my description. It can have links, whatever you normally would have, but it's going to be 0 points in the assignment group category. Now, this can be for homework. This can be for practice. This can actually be for your assessment that you are going to do, that you want to check and assess student mastery. So all of those are going to go into this same category. To display the grade, I like to choose complete and incomplete. Even though it's worth 0 points, I like that incomplete and complete tells a little bit of information to students and to parents. So when they're looking in the traditional gradebook in Canvas, You have the ability to make assignments show particular colors, like if they're late, they're red. If they are, I think late is blue, missing is red. But you have those that you can turn on by default, so it will mark them. But I also like to mark them as complete or incomplete, so parents know, like, yes, my student did this assignment, or no, the student did the assignment, but it wasn't complete. They turned something in, but it was incomplete. So it's just an extra bit of information that I like to provide for parents, because I want them to know not just if they're mastering standards, but I want them to know if they're actually doing the work and making progress to be able to be assessed or to be able to learn the content before they're assessed for mastery. So complete or incomplete. You could check the box to have the assignment not count towards the final grade. That's an option. I just leave it blank because it's worth 0 points. It doesn't matter. And I like to, again, have it show all of the different things, complete, incomplete, late, etc. Now for submission type, I'm going to choose whatever I want, no submission online or on paper. External tool is a little different in terms of being able to visualize rubrics, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I normally have whatever the assignment type is, unless it's an external tool. If it's an external tool, I choose on paper or no submission just for now while I'm setting this up. You can have group assignments, etc. Due date, I'm just going to put in some sort of arbitrary due date here, and then I'm going to press save. I'm not going to publish because I'm not done yet. We need to attach our outcomes for this to this assignment. And you'll notice that once I saved it, I can now see the assignment. I would see if I had any instructions right in this area here. But I have this option for plus rubric. And the reason I said if you're using an external tool to not choose that just yet is because if you choose an external tool like Turnitin or Google Assignments, you do not have the option to add the rubric. So there's a workaround. Mark it as like no submission first, then you're going to add a rubric, just like I'm going to do right now. And then after you add your rubric, then you can go back and change it to an external tool, and the rubric will still be attached and viewable in SpeedGrader. So to add the rubric, I'm going to click plus rubric. And here I can type in things for points, but again, I don't want it worth any points. I'm going to delete this first criteria. And then right here, you'll see it says find outcome. When I choose find outcome, I can see my outcomes, and I can only choose one at a time. So I'm going to choose 1.1, and I also want to add 1.2. When I look at these standards, I can actually go through and see everything I want to see about it. It doesn't give me the edit, but I can like look at the whole standard. And then I'm just going to say import. So now I have my two standards, 1.1 and 1.2. I am going to change the title. I don't want it to be some rubric. I want it to be whatever the standard is. And so it might be like asking questions, whatever that might be. So you'll change that. And then down at the bottom, there are some questions that you, or some checkboxes that you can look at. You are going to either, if you want this to go to the Learning Mastery Gradebook, you're going to want this to be all unchecked. Or one of the things that I don't want to use this year is I don't want to show my students the points. Because if they see 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, they're automatically going to start calculating points and grades. And I don't want this to be about points and grades. I want it to be about their mastery. So I'm going to remove points from the rubric, so students don't see the 4, 3, 2, 1. I haven't done this before with students. It might bite me in the butt because I'm not going to be completely transparent with like all of their scores in each of their categories and each of their averages by removing the points from the rubric. So it might bite me in the butt when it comes time to posting grades, but I'm going to try it without removing or without having the points. So I'm going to remove points from rubric. Now, if this was something that was just practice, like the first time my students are asking questions, I may not want it to go to the Learning Mastery Gradebook, whatever their scores are, whatever their outcomes are. I might not want them to see them because they're obviously the first time doing something are probably not going to do it very well. So I might don't post outcomes to Learning Mastery Gradebook because it's like the first time we're just learning how to do something. They could still see the rubric and get the feedback, but it's not going to affect their learning mastery and the learning mastery like percentage that they get. They don't know what percentage it is. I mean, they'll know if like they got all threes that it's a 3 when if they're assessed like 5 times on one thing and they got a 3 every time, they'll know it's a 3 because I do tell them on the syllabus that it's 4, 3, 2, 1. But anyways, so you could do this if it's not for an assessment purpose, but you still want them to see the rubric so you can provide feedback to them. But let's just say that this one I want to go to the Learning Mastery Gradebook and I don't want them to see the points. I can click Create Rubric. I already have some rubrics created though that have these particular outcomes together. So I'm going to say cancel just to show you what that would look like. I'm going to go to cancel, I'm going to go to plus rubric, and I can go over here to find a rubric. And I can look into this class and I have asking questions already. Actually, I only used one of the 2 criteria, but let's say I wanted to use that. I could reuse rubrics, so I don't have to create a rubric every single time if I've already used or created them for other assignments. So I'm just going to say use this rubric, and then I have my rubric here. Now, again, it's only one. I just wanted to ask questions, not to develop solutions. So anyways, one of the things though that I found is helpful in terms of management as a teacher and potentially also for the students, sometimes it gets hard to determine which assignments have which learning outcomes assigned to them. Let me show you an example. So I'm going over into this student account here, and I'm just going to refresh the page because I've added an assignment. When I look at this, I can see that there are like 1 alignment to standard 1.1, none for 1.2, 2 for 2.1. I don't know what assignments they are until I click on the little thing and look at them, and I can say, oh, this assignment was linked to 2.1, or this assignment was linked to 2.2. So it gets a little challenging to like navigate. It's not perfect in terms of the organization. So a tip from a teacher who was using this last year had said that something that worked really well for him is in the title of your assignment to put the standards that are being assessed. So for this assignment, it's 1.1. So I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm just going to put 1.1, and then press Save. That way, when I'm like looking at my gradebook or looking in my assignment list, I can say, oh, okay, I assessed on this assignment 1.1. It just makes it easier to find things. One other tip I mentioned, if you were wanting to use an external tool and you wanted to add the rubric, to first make it like on paper or no submission in your submission type, and then save it, add the rubric. Then what I would recommend doing, when you change it to an external tool, the rubric's still attached, but it's not visible to the students when they look at it in an assignment, like it was if it was a no submission or an online upload submission. So what I recommend doing is taking a screen capture, a screenshot of your rubric, and then editing your assignment and putting the rubric picture, your screenshot, in this description. Then change it from on paper to external tool and add your external tool. That way students will still see the rubric in the description itself. Once you've done that, you can save, and publish your assignment. When you are ready to assess students' work for Learning Mastery, you are going to need to go to SpeedGrader. And so you can access it from the assignment itself. You'll see SpeedGrader, but you can also access it from the home page in your to-do list when you click on the assignment, or from the gradebook. I'm going to click on SpeedGrader here in the assignment. And it will show me the assignment of the student over here on the left menu. And where I have the ability to choose complete, incomplete, or excused is right over here. So I can type in whether the student, let's say the student turned in work, they turned in this assignment, but it's completely blank. So I can say that it's incomplete. So that way the parents know that they turned something in, but it's not done. Then I have all the feedback features, the assignment comments that I can put down here, but I'm going to want to access the rubric. So I'm going to click on View Rubric, and I can move this over so I can see more of the rubric, whatever I need. And here, this one had two different rubrics, or two different criteria or outcomes that were being assessed at this for this particular assignment. And so I can just click whatever one I feel is appropriate for each category. Over here on the right, I could add in particular comments for this particular criteria, or this one for this criteria. Let's say they did really well on this one too, or exemplary. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But I could add particular information here. I had that long description that was in my outcomes. I can view longer description here if I want to. But again, I could add different things. I could do voice comments for the overall assignment. So I have lots of options to be able to provide feedback for the student. I'm going to press save, and then I could press submit if I needed to submit the comment down here. And then I can just go from student to review or assess their scores. What this is going to look like in the gradebook. So I'm going to get out of, I could have just clicked on the gradebook icon, but I'm going to get out of there. I want to go to grades. So right now I'm in the Learning Mastery Gradebook, and I'm not a huge fan of how this is organized right now. I think I could view it in a different way. I need to play with it a little bit to change the order around, but let's not spend a bunch of time doing that right now. So I'm going to look at my different standards over here. And I can see, again, I only have one student in this class, but I can see where they are, like whether they've met mastery or they are near mastery. And if I hover over the title, it shows me just what the standard information is. But it doesn't give me information about how many times the student was assessed. I only see their overall score right here. If I want to view this by student, I can click on the student's name, and this window opens up on the right, and then I can click on grades, and here in the grades section, this is looking like individual grades per student. I want to be in Learning Mastery. Here I can see that the student has mastered 2 out of 20 standards. However, the alignment part is important too. I have not assigned or aligned, I've not created an assignment where I've attached 1.2 to that assignment, so that's why it says no alignments. But you can see I've assessed this student, or I've assessed 1.1 2 different times. And if I click on it, I can see this first time they got approaching. I have not yet assessed the second one. If I go down to this one here, this student has gotten a approaching on both of those. If I go down to this one here for 2.2, the student got mastery on both of these. So I can see how the student is doing individually in this way. I'm going to go back over to grades so I can look at the whole gradebook. One thing that will help is I can click Hide Outcomes with no results, and it gets rid of all the extra that you have not assessed yet, which will make things a little easier when you're looking at the gradebook. Now, I'm going to go back to the regular gradebook, the traditional style gradebook. And here in the regular gradebook, you will see that the student had completed these 2 assignments and they got an X on this, which means that it was incomplete. Now, if a student didn't turn something in, so for example, let's say that this student never turned it in, you can turn on the settings where it will automatically mark something missing or late. The due date for this is in the future, so I'm just going to go in and mark this missing, so that way I can see that it's actually missing and it does the color coding. But this might be something that I'm looking at for my students. Now, in this gradebook, I'm seeing all assignment groups. I'm seeing the assignment group and the letter grade group. I might just want to look at assignments at this point instead of all assignment groups, and that will take out some of those columns, or here would just be looking at their overall grade in the class, and I'll show you how I create those assignments in just a minute. When you are ready to assign letter grades to students, to convert their learning mastery to an actual point or letter grade, such as at the end of a grade reporting period, what you need to do first is go back into your assignments section of Canvas. And you need to create an assignment that's called like quarter 1 progress grade or quarter 1, whatever the grading period is. And I'm going to show you one that I set up. I'm going to go in and edit. And I had a little blurb that I put in here just to help parents and students understand what this is. And I created just one assignment, quarter 1 progress grade. And it's worth 4 points. And it's in the letter grade transferred from Learning Mastery group. That is going to be 100% of the grade. And I want to display it as points. There's no submission. And I'm assigning it to everyone, grade, due date, etc. Okay, so I'm saying save. What that does is that puts in my gradebook a column for the grades. So it's right here, quarter 1 progress grade. It is a grade or grade category that I have to physically type in numbers for each student. Okay, so I'm just going to view it by this one category. So I need to type in numbers. Where I'm going to get these numbers is I am going to go back to my gradebook. And in my gradebook, I'm going to go to Learning Mastery. And you will notice that on the right-hand side of the screen, there's an export report. So this is how I'm choosing on doing this, because I'm using the decaying average. I need to have it do the math for me. And so this is kind of a little workaround. You could, if you were doing, let's say, n number of times, you can just count up how many students have mastered. And then type in how many they mastered out of and then the total number of points you would have is the number of standards that you've assessed. The one thing I don't like about n number of master is it only shows you when students have mastered. It doesn't show you if they're near mastery or well below mastery. If they got near mastery, these would be blank. So that's why I like the decaying average. Another option that you could use is instead of creating one assignment just for the first quarter grades, I could create multiple assignments here and label this one 1.1, have another assignment 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, whatever your number of standards are. And then you can have 2 windows open. And if you had the points showing, you can just type them down by the columns. That was a little tedious. I don't want to have to type in every single standard for every single student. I just want to type in one number. Okay, so that's why I have one column for quarter one progress grade. And I'm going to click Export Report. What this is going to do is it is going to download a CSV file. I'm going to upload this CSV file into my Google Drive. So I'm going to click New, File Upload, and I'm going to get the CSV file. I think it's this one, hopefully. And I'm going to say Open. And then I'm going to open up that document. Notice it just has one student, Melissa student. That's because I only have one student in the class. This will have all of your students listed here. But it has student ID. It has this random column, which this one has nothing in it. Then it has another column that's called the same thing, but this one's results. This one is mastery points. So it's telling you that 3 is what is set as mastery. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the columns that I've actually assessed standards on. So this one here is the result. So they got a 3 and mastery was a 3. So I'm just going to color code these, and I want every other one. Okay, so this is my result, result, result. These ones are just the mastery points. I haven't assessed those. Then I'm going to delete all of the extra columns. So this takes a little bit of work within Canvas just to clean it up. And I'm getting rid of all of the columns that I didn't highlight yellow. So delete selected columns. So now what I have here is the students' scores on these different standards that have been assessed: 2.2, 2.3, 1.1, and 2.1. So they got a 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 4. The reason it said 3 for the mastery is because we set the mastery score at 3. When students see it, they're going to see it out of 3. If you turn the points on, remember I had points turned off, they'll see it out of 3 points. And it confuses them sometimes because it says I got a 3 out of 3. Really, they got a 3 out of 4 total points, but a 3 is mastery. All right, now I'm going to add a new column. So I'm going to click on the cell, the last cell, and then the arrow, and then insert column right. I'm going to make this column a different color just to make it more visual, easy to see. And in this box, it has some text there. It's just the rollover from this cell to the left of it. I'm just going to double click. I'm going to type in average. Then I'm going to go into my first square here, F2. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to type in some fake data just so we can see what happens when you have more kids. Sorry, we don't have any 4s, 5s. Okay. So I'm going to click on, now that I have some fake student data, I'm going to click on F2. And then I'm going to go over here to this formula function symbol. I'm going to click on the little arrow, and I'm going to choose average. When I click on average, it puts the formula in, and notice I have a blinking cursor in between 2 parentheses. I'm going to highlight and drag so I have these 4 cells highlighted, cell B2, C2, D2, and E2. And it automatically puts the right formula in here. I'm going to press the enter or return key on my keyboard. And since I have data over here in the column before, it suggests an autofill. And if I click that checkbox, it's going to do it for all of the rows. And so now I have these averages for my students. And then this is what I'm going to do by going back to the gradebook. When I'm over here in my quarter 1 progress grade, I can open up my, I have multiple, it's not working because I have a different monitor set up on the side. But I can resize my windows here. Drag this down. Oops, that's the wrong one. Where's the one I wanted? I want this one. And drag him down. And it takes some futzing. But you only have to do this once each grading period. And a tip, I can't see, if I have too many assignments, I can't see the average and the student name. Notice that there's this dark gray bar on the side and on the bottom of this like empty cell. I could grab either one. I want this one here. I'm going to grab him and I'm going to put it right after the student name. So then when I scroll, I can see it on my screen. Another option is grab this and see how when my cursor is just in the right spot, it turns into a hand. I could grab and I can move it so it's right next to it. And now what I can do is when I need to enter the grade, I'm just going to type in 2.75. And I can go down the list of my students and type in their grades. Just double check every once in a while. Sometimes I've noticed in some programs, they alphabetize a little differently, whether you have students with like a apostrophe in their last name or if there's like a space or something. So just double check that your students are in the correct spot. But then I just have to type in all of their quarter one progress grades, just that one time. Then when I look at the grade, I see that this student has a 68.75%, which is a B. Now, you might be thinking 68.7%, whoops, that should be, a D. It's not. Remember, we changed our grading categories to match the standards-based grading. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can have columns for each standard. So you can have, I have 20 different standards total. I could have 20 columns for each standard, and I can type those in. That will make it a little more visible to students and parents of how their grade was calculated. And I may end up switching to that, but right now I don't want it to be about the grade. I don't want it to be about the number. I don't want them to be focused on that. I want it to be mastery. So I'm only going to put in that one score for quarter one progress. But what I'm going to do next is, let's say it's quarter one grading period time. I'm going to go over to my assignments, and over here in the assignments, I have an assignment that I set up that's quarter one. So this will be at the end of quarter one. I have this same assignment, but it's titled quarter one. It's worth 4 points. Right now, it's not counting towards the final grade. I'm leaving it like that just for a moment. It's assigned to everyone just like before. I'm going to save and publish. Now, when it's time for me to enter in the next grade, to convert to letter grades, I'm going to do the whole export system at that particular point in time. So a couple weeks later, I will do that whole export system again. Then what I'll do is I'll type in whatever their score is now. I'm just making stuff up, 2.88. So it's still a B. But the students don't see this grade because right now, remember, it wasn't counting towards the final grade. What I'm going to do is I don't want these to be an average of each other. I don't want to add them upon each other. This is their current grade for quarter one. I need to go into my quarter one progress grade, edit this assignment, and I'm going to make this one not count towards the final grade. So my previous one doesn't count towards the final grade anymore. And then I need to go back into the quarter one and edit. And I do want this one to count towards the final grade, so I'm going to uncheck. Okay, so now when students view their grades, they'll see that first quarter progress, they have the 2.75. But at quarter one, they have the 2.88. So at this time, they have a 2.88. That's what's showing. Now you could go in and delete this assignment. I want to leave it here. And the reason is I think it's kind of cool for me to be able to see, and for students and parents to be able to see their progress over time. And hopefully, as the year goes on, they're going to start to see that their grades are going up. Especially if you're repeating a lot of the same standards throughout the whole year. If you're doing new standards throughout the whole year, it might not be like a study app, but it's a great way to see progress of a student throughout the year. So that's why I like doing just one thing. I'm going to do that export, and I just enter in one at a time. And then when I enter the new one, I'm going to make the old one no longer part of the final grade. One thing to note when using quizzes, right now you have access to new quizzes as well as classic quizzes. Classic quizzes will be deprecated at the end of, I believe, the 2021-22 school year. And classic quizzes will pass results to the Mastery Gradebook. With classic quizzes, you can only align item banks, though, to outcomes, not to individual questions. In new quizzes, you can attach outcomes to individual questions. However, even though you can attach outcomes and you can assess on the outcomes, the mastery of those outcomes do not pass to the Learning Mastery Gradebook. Canvas says that once old quizzes or classic quizzes are deprecated, that the new quizzes will have that feature, but as of today, July 25th, 2021, the outcomes that you attach to new quizzes do not pass results to the Learning Mastery Gradebook. So keep that in mind if you are using Canvas quizzes. Be sure to check in the description of the YouTube video for the timeline where you can jump ahead to different parts of the video, but also you will find links to different resources that I've mentioned. One of them is this slide deck, which is kind of everything I talked about in the video, but in written form with images, if that helps you. And then on the very last slide is resources with some slides that I used with a video to show students and parents or explain to them what is standards-based grading, and then also how to find their grades and kind of navigate between the Learning Mastery Gradebook and the Assignment Gradebook within Canvas. And as of right now, today, I have my 2020 version of those in there, and I will be updating it, and I will update the link here for 2021 with what I'm going to use with my students this year. So feel free to use the video or use the slides, make a copy of the slides and edit them to match your own system that you are using, and you could use those if you want to make a video for your students. And just a shout out to Brian Bennett from Elkhart Community Schools for kind of helping provide guidance and sharing ideas and strategies of how to use the Learning Mastery Gradebook within Canvas for standards-based grading. Thank you so much.